Well, brand new developments in the Iran nuclear showdown, or at least that's what is being called this year. Tehran is now agreeing to allow UN inspectors into a key military complex. You see it right there on your screen, where the UN believes secret work may be underway. They haven't been able to get into it as of yet. In the meantime, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council announced today they had agreed to a new round of talks with Iran. This as sanctions tighten in the hopes the rogue nation will put an end to its nuclear ambition, put an end or be forced to put an end to its nuclear ambition. Our next guest says this isn't going to work and wrote a recent op-ed entitled "Why Starving Iran Won't Free It." Hooman Majd is an Iranian-American journalist, and he joins us now. So, Hooman, why do you think sanctions enable the regime rather than force change?
Well, I mean, I think that what happens with sanctions is you put a lot of pressure on the people more than you do on any regime. And that's been proven in places like North Korea, places like Cuba. In our case right now, the U.S. is putting sanctions on Iran in order to get them to do one of two things. One is to either change completely or to capitulate on the nuclear program. And in neither of those cases are they going to work. I actually happen to agree with Benjamin Netanyahu. Unusually, I agree with him when he says the sanctions aren't probably not going to work.
So what will work, Hooman?
Well, I think you have to have some sort of diplomacy. I mean, we talk about diplomacy. President Obama talked about diplomacy yesterday, but there is no diplomacy. There is no diplomacy whatsoever. It's just threats and sanctions. And if you threaten Iran constantly, what you're going to do is you're going to destroy the middle class. You're going to give an excuse to the regime, to the government of Iran, to not allow civil society to function, not allow activists to demand their rights, not allow any kind of freedom in the country, any kind of real freedom in the country, and you're going to continue just enriching the government to some degree.
So the president has offered to sit down with Ahmadinejad. He's offered to go to Iran to engage in that diplomacy.
Well, he hasn't actually done that.
And so, but he says he hasn't had an answer. He hasn't been invited. He hasn't been invited into the country to actually have that happen. So
I'm not sure if that's exactly what he said. I mean, the U.S. Obama said during his campaign that he would be willing to talk to Iran. He would be willing to engage Iran. What resulted after his election was one 45-minute meeting in 2010. Between the United States and Iran over the nuclear issue.
And you think that's not enough? He had to do more than that?
I don't know how 45 minutes in 3 years is going to resolve anything. So I think that the real question here is what is the ultimate goal? If you're going to say we're going to sanction you, if that doesn't work, we're going to bomb you. Well, what incentive does Iran have to come to the table in the beginning?
Well, you make an important point. Is this regime evil?
I don't think so, no. I think the regime is very, very brutal towards its own people, but I mean, the word evil is bandied about a little bit too easily in this country these days when it comes to other countries.
The reason why I ask is because there seems to be this conversation, whether it's with Iran or other countries, Afghanistan, for example, where we seem to suggest that our behavior will change the people who hate us. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, and if I can ask the director to pull you back up on screen, because I hate just talking to myself. Hooman, I want to see you. There you go.
Okay.
You know, that seems to be, we're very critical of ourselves, saying that all our behavior is leading to our wars, and our behavior is the reason why the Iranian regime, doesn't want to engage us. And I'm curious if there's real change that can be made from our own behavior, or whether or not these regimes are just going on their path, whatever we do.
Well, first of all, I do think that there is possibility for a change in the behavior of different regimes, whether it's Iran or anywhere else. First of all, most Iranians, the vast majority of Iranians, do not hate America. The vast majority of Iranians actually admire America. I would say even within the regime, there are people who admire America. There are things we could do, yes, in terms of the way we approach our foreign policy. This constant mantra that we have is that you either do what we want you to do or else, in Iran's case, or else we're going to bomb you, doesn't really, doesn't engender a lot of hope in Iran among the people or among the regime that there could be a breakthrough in relations. I mean, the Iranian view and the American view are very far apart at this point. But I do believe that diplomacy does have a real chance, but there has to be real diplomacy, not just sanctions, not just all the sticks and no carrots. Nothing has been offered Iran right now.
It's interesting your opinion, because some people have criticized the president for not carrying a big enough stick when it comes to Iran. So it's nice to have a different point of view with us today, Hooman. Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jenna.